Black sand, have you ever had to deal with it? It can be a real pain in the neck. Today I'm going to tell you a way to solve your problem, to process your black sands and get all the gold out of it. We're going to deal with some crazy things that people talk about, problems that you can have, situations, sometimes places and things have different kinds of problems, because black sand isn't all one material. It isn't all one thing. It's a mixture of things. And that's why, some places it's different than others. But, if you're using any kind of sluicing, panning, dry washing, anything where you're using gravity to separate out the gold from gravels, the gravity's going to get all the heavy stuff, right? Which includes the gold, but also includes other heavy minerals like black sand and that kind of stuff. And so, we're going to dive into it and get into how to solve the black sand problem. So if you're interested in solving the black sand problem to get all the gold out of the black sand that you have, well, watch this video. And especially at today's prices, you don't want to take even a small amount and go, hey, I don't want this, just throw it out in my garden. Just toss that black sand out there and give up. And you know what, do that at today's prices. If there's a tenth of a gram in there, it's still 10, 12 bucks, right? So it's worth maybe doing a little bit of effort. And if there's more than a few tenths of a gram, even if there's a whole gram, that's $120, $130, $140. So gold is worth a lot of money. You want to get it all. Now I have people contact me and ask me about different methods. Oh, Chris, I got black sand, but I'm going to use acid and just dissolve it all. Or I got a bunch of black sand and I'm just going to throw it and smelt the whole thing and get the gold out of it that way. Well, there's a lot of these methods that people say, and I know because I've seen it done, they don't work, okay? And that's why we're going to talk about solutions that work, right? So, one of the things I've had people tell me is they're just going to dissolve it all with acid, right? So you're going to boil your black sands in hydrochloric acid for a month until they all dissolve. And then what are you going to do? Okay, so maybe you could get most of their, because there's some elements in black sand, because remember I said it's not all one thing, right? There's some elements that won't dissolve in your hydrochloric acid. The most of the stuff will eventually. Like I say, you may need to heat a couple of gallons of hydrochloric, depending on how much black sand you have. It won't be like you have a pound of black sand and you put a cup of hydrochloric acid in and suddenly it all dissolves. It doesn't work like that. The black sand is pretty durable. It'll take a long time for the acid to slowly digest all that iron oxide because it's just not very soluble. And so it's not a good solution because then you end up with this couple of gallons, a gallon, depending on how much black sand you have and how much you need. You may have a gallon or two of ferric, mixture iron chloride and in high acid, and believe me, it'll still be very acidic. You can't just pour that stuff out on the ground. It'll get into whatever water table. It's a mess. You don't want to cause a problem with the local water table, right? So acid, really bad choice, okay? Crushing. I want to crush my sands to get all the gold out of it. Well, this is another thing I tell people is that 99.9% of all the gold that's in your black sand is actually free gold. It's not somehow combined with other mystical, magical things that if you crush it, it will release all the gold. 99.9%. And there are a few exceptions, a few places where there is stuff trapped with the particles of iron and that other things that crushing it. A lot of times what you have a situation with is with gold that's come from a close by hard rock mine that has pretty decent amount of sulfides in it. And so you get the pyrite and the gold form together. That's very common. And then when it is on the surface, eventually the pyrite is converted to iron oxides. And it was originally wrapped around the gold as pyrite. Well, now it's wrapped around the gold as iron oxides. And some of that stuff is basically black sand. So you do have a few places like that, but most of the time, what happens is if you're a ways away from the original placer source, the veins, that just pounding and stuff in the rocks breaks that all up, and then you have free gold and little bits of black sand. But occasionally, if you're close enough to the hard rock mine, I've had ones where I literally have dry washed a foot or two from the vein, and yeah, then you have an issue with that stuff. And so there are a few things but if you're working in any kind of a stream or a river or something like that, if you're not 2 feet from the vein, probably crushing is going to do no good to you. And it's going to be that 99.9% of the gold in your black sands is just really, really fine, small size black gold. Now let's talk about sizes. Yeah, that's one thing I want to talk about too, is there's mesh sizes, right? People say, oh, well, that passed through a 20 mesh screen, or this passed through a 100 mesh screen, or 50 mesh screen. What is a mesh screen? Well, okay, mesh is how many holes to the inch. So if you have 50 mesh screen, there's 50 holes per linear inch. And that counts it's not a 50th of an inch. It counts the wire for the screen too. So even counting the wire, so a 50 mesh screen might be something, depending on the manufacturer, might be something like the equivalent of a 75th of an inch. Even though it's 50 mesh, it's not 1/50th. It's because you count the wire too. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is smelting. I get people said, yeah, I've got a couple pounds of black sand, I'm just going to smelt it all. And it's like, if you've got a pound or two of black sand, and in your pound of black sand there's a gram or two of gold, and you mix it all with flux and heat it all up, you're not going to have a little bead of gold at the bottom. You're going to have a mess. And if you thought separating out the gold from the pound of black sand, a gram of gold from a pound of black sand was hard when it was, as you originally had it, the pound of black sand, it's going to be worse if you smelt it that way. What you need to do, and if you're going to smelt, everybody smelts and stuff. I smelt my concentrates, but you need to get it to where the gold is at or near the majority of the weight. So if you had 5 grams of black sand and 1 gram of gold, you probably could smelt that and have no problem. Better if you had 2 or 3 grams of gold and a couple of 2 or 3 grams of black sand with it, so it's 50-50. That'll smell fine. You won't have a problem with that. So smelting, you need to get the bulk of the black sand out before you do any smelting. The other classic one, the classic one of all time, is to use mercury. And I used to use mercury, okay? But I've gotten to where I just don't like to do that. There's issues, there's problems. If you use a retort, well, you're making mercury vapor. That's not great. If you use acid to dissolve the mercury, like nitric acid, well, then you end up with mercuric nitrate, which is another thing you probably don't want to don't want. So let me show you a little bit and talk a little bit about mercury. It's been done and it can be done. I just don't recommend it. But let's talk about it. Here is some amalgam that I made for myself. In the old days, I used to take all my dredging concentrates, the black sand from that, and I would take out what gold I could easily take out. But the last black sand that had some really fine gold in it that was hard to remove, I would usually, get it down. I'd be dredging, and I'd get every year's concentrates down to just a few tablespoons of black sand, and then I'd put that last little bit in a jar with some mercury, and I'd swirl it around. And after a number of years, I pulled it out and I ran the mercury through a squeegee, through a cloth, and this is the cloth that I actually ran it through, and squeezed out the loose liquid mercury, and I ended up with this chunk of amalgam. Well, when I
processed this, I got better than half an ounce of gold out of it, but it was more than a decade's worth of dredging and the fine gold that was left behind. But still, it was a nice haul. Anyway, there's a lot of potential problems with mercury, and the regulators today are really afraid of it. And if handled properly, it can be safe, but if handled improperly, it really can be pretty dangerous.
Now, my method, we talked about all these other things, my method is to use magnets and tapping and shaking and stuff like that to separate it out. And I sometimes just use magnets and sometimes use a blue bowl. I'll give you the dividing line for that. If I have like a handful of black sand with some gold in it, I'm not going to get out the blue bowl for that. Because it requires setup. It's not, blue bowl is great because they're cheap and easy to use if you do it right. But for just a handful, I'm just going to use the magnets. If I've been sluicing for a few days or over a period of time and I've accumulated a pound or two of black sand and I've got some gold in there, then I'm going to get out the blue bowl and set it up and the blue bowl will get rid of the vast majority of the black sand, and you'll be down to the last little bit, and then you can use the magnets on the last little bit. So let me show you a little clip on the blue bowl and how it works, and then we'll get back to the magnet part of it. Okay, so I've got the blue bowl going, and I want to talk to you about some of the secrets of the blue bowl. One is to have uniform size material. That's why I did that screening. It's really important to do screening. If you put coarse material and fine material through at the same time into the blue bowl, it won't work very well. And what will happen is the bigger, coarser pieces of black sand and heavy minerals will stay in the blue bowl. And if you turn up the flow fast enough to blow the bigger pieces through, then the finer, tiny gold will also blow through and out of the blue bowl too. Now, another thing, I've got the blue bowl here sitting on a bucket, so whatever goes through the blue bowl and it actually goes out, it's not really lost, it's just gone into the bottom of the bucket. So I still have it in the bottom of the bucket if for some reason I'm not able to recover it all in the blue bowl. It looks like it's working pretty good. You probably can't see it from your angle, but I've got it to where the black sand is going through, and I can see the gold kind of sitting there and not moving so much. And that's kind of the goal in the blue bowl, is to achieve a flow speed that will take the black sand out but leave the gold behind. And in water flows like this, like I say, if you have big pieces and fine gold, it's like, think of it like if you had a rock the size of my fist and a little tiny gold picker, just a little teensy tiny piece. The flow that it would take to blow a rock the size of my fist, a regular rock, would be the same kind of flow that it would take to do this little picker. So what you have to do is screen so that you have the same size pieces, and the flow that it would take to move a little tiny bit of sand, a little rock, little tiny piece, won't move the gold. See, and that's how the blue bowl works. So I've got the flow up here, and I've just got it right to where the black sand is moving out and the gold is staying behind. And that's really the goal of the blue bowl, and they actually work really well. And they're not very expensive. The only real downside of the blue bowl is that it's pretty slow. It will take me a while to process even the small amount of black sand that I had from the bag that Rob sent me. So anyway, you don't need to watch every minute of this, but you get the feel for the black sand moving through and the gold getting left behind. And basically I'm putting a lot of water on my lawn, but my lawn's really dry. The other thing about blue bowls too that you need to do is it needs to be pretty level. You can't have it, well out of balance. It needs to be pretty darn level in order for the thing to work right. And I've got it adjusted just about right. Like I say, I'm pulling a little bit of black sand out at a time. It just, normally when you run these things in the field, actually you go ahead and use a recirculating pump. You know, you could set this up in a bucket, in a tub, and then you could have your recirculating pump in the tub, and the stuff going out of the bucket would just go in a tub, and then it would get recirculated, and you get a little pump, and it works great. So you don't need to do like I'm doing. This is actually my garden hose coming in here and running this, but like I say, my lawn is really dry. It's been awful dry here, and so the lawn is saying thank you, thank you for the water. Now I'm going to keep doing this. Like I say, I'm not going to record 20 minutes or a half an hour of me fiddling with the blue bowl and getting the material to process through. You don't need to see that. Now that you've seen how it works and what the process is, so you're familiar with it. And I'll be right back when I've got this thing all processed. Okay, there you can see the rim of black sand right around the central little cone in the blue bowl. And I've cleaned through the black sand. I haven't tested yet the black sand in the bucket, but I will collect out the gold that's in the blue bowl, and then also you'll probably notice that there's a little bit of black sand still in there, and that's what we'll use our magnet to clean out, and we'll end up with a nice clean bit of gold from the beach sands that I got from Rob at Washington Beach Mining. Anyway, that's the next step in the process, and I'll get back with you and we'll go through the magnet step as well. I'll collect this out of the blue bowl with a little snuffer bottle. Okay, now I said that my method is using magnets and tapping and shaking. And I've talked a little bit about magnetic gold and magnetite, and there are some deposits where there is magnetite and gold will wrap around it, or the magnetite will be around the gold, and they'll be together. And then of course, if you use a magnet on that, the magnet will attract the magnetite. It won't attract the gold. If you have pure gold, the magnet will not suck it up on to the magnet. Gold is not really magnetic, but if you have magnetite, it's an issue. And so whenever you're using your magnets, you need to keep an eye on things. But like I say, the vast majority of that is free gold. And if you use the magnets carefully and using my method that I'm going to describe for you, you're not going to have a problem with this. So let's take a look at my method for using magnets to separate black sand from gold and end up with clean gold. But I've developed a better way, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate to you today. A better way of getting clean gold just using panning and normal panning techniques and some magnets. Now, people have used magnets before, and there's a danger to magnets. You put them in and you get an entire glob of gold or glob of black sand out, but this black sand will have gold trapped in it. And that's the downside of magnets, is you put them in too fast and they suck up everything, and you end up with not just black sand on the magnet, but you end up losing gold with it too. So I'm going to talk to you today my techniques for how not to lose gold with your black sand. What we're going to actually start with is a fairly weak magnet. This is a magnet I got out of a speaker. This is a moderately strong magnet that we're going to use. And then a big, super strong, I keep it in protection so I don't get my fingers pinched. A very strong magnet at the very end, but we're going to use them in steps, and I'm going to demonstrate this whole process to you. So if you want to find out how to make clean gold out of your black sand, then stick around. We're going to go through the whole thing together. So for some people, black sand is a kind of a mysterious substance. Like, what is it? It's the heavy part of what you get when you process sand and gravel, But it can contain, in addition to just gold, platinum, diamonds, tin, tungsten, all kinds of stuff. So let's talk about first, let's sit down and talk about what is black sand and what is it really made of?
So what is black sand? That's a question some people ask, and like I say, it is a mystery to some. Well, it forms because many minerals in the earth are not really stable to weathering, and the effect of rainwater and oxygen changes them. And literally, rocks that are super hard and strong will eventually get weathered and become soft. And this is basically how soil is formed, dirt and that sort of thing, because the minerals in some rocks just break down and become soft and porous. Well, some of the minerals are more durable, and these are the ones that survive to get freed as particles and enter into streams. Heavy minerals are the durable ones that have above average density. Most are dark colored because they contain iron, but some are lighter. The most common heavy minerals that form your heavy concentrate sands include hematite, magnetite, garnet, ilmenite, rutile, and zircon. Now, of these, only zircon is light colored. Okay, the rest of them are all dark, and these accumulations are found in stream beds where the stream flow energy is sufficient to carry away the low density minerals like clays or even to a certain extent quartz sand, but the heavy minerals get left behind. And included with the heavy minerals that are durable is any gold. Okay, that's why gold, because it's also heavy like the minerals I just mentioned, it accumulates in your heavy black sands. Thus, the heavy minerals that are resistant to weathering and abrasion concentrate in certain areas in a stream, like the inside bends and behind boulders and that sort of things. And even though these heavy minerals may only be a small percentage of the local rocks, they tend to accumulate. In addition to the gold, in placer mining, some deposits also carry things like cassiterite, which is an ore of tin, and chromite, which is, like it sounds, an ore of chromium, and diamond, platinum, and zircon. Actually, zircon is a mineral that contains a rare metal called zirconium that is used in certain things. So this is a little bit about what black sand is. And certainly it's common stuff. If you're a placer miner, you'll end up, like I do, with a lot of this kind of thing that you have to deal with. So what are exactly those minerals? Well, magnetite is an iron oxide and contains both ferric and ferrous iron ions, and it's strongly magnetic, and it usually is a large percentage of black sand. Hematite is another iron oxide, dark in color, but only very weakly magnetic, and it's found in a moderate amount in a lot of black sands. Ilmenite is an iron and titanium oxide that is very slightly magnetic and is usually a small portion of the black sand. Garnet, usually dark, but one of the things about what the percentage of these are is it varies a lot. I mean, in some places there's loads of magnetite, in other places there's hardly any. In some places there's loads of garnet. Like I say, it's variable, the proportion. There are places where the heavy sands are deep red in color because of all the garnet that's inside them. Zircon is another heavy mineral. It's a zirconium mineral, like I say. Various pyroxenes and amphiboles, these have iron usually in them, and so they're dark in color. And then rutile, which is a titanium oxide. It's not magnetic. And usually these are all small parts, but they are a part of black sands in a lot of different places. Now, there are some rare minerals found in black sand, And I mentioned one of these, cassiterite, which is a tin. It's basically the most important ore of tin. It's valuable in some placers, and in fact, in some places, the placer mining is not done for gold. It's actually placer is mined for its tin content because there's so much cassiterite in the heavy concentrates. The same thing with chromite, which is valuable in some places. Wolframite, which is a tungsten mineral, important tungsten ore. And again, it's valuable in some places. And then, of course, there are certainly placer diamonds that are mined. It's not very common, but in some places where there are significant placer diamonds, then yeah, it's very valuable. Same thing with platinum. It's rare, but it's valuable in some places. Monazite, which is a rare earth mineral. Again, valuable in some places. And scheelite, another tungsten mineral. Also valuable in some places where there's enough of these rare things in the gravel, that they can be mined for these unusual minerals.
So today we're going to be using a standard finishing pan to take care of these black sands. But there are other ways of doing it, and other guys have other techniques. I'm not saying mine is the only one. There are a lot of different ways to process black sands. One popular way is with the blue bowl. A blue bowl actually is pretty good because you're letting the flow of water do the work for you. And I can tell you a little bit about it. Okay, so I've got my concentrates, my black sands, into my finishing pan, and this stuff is, it's got black sand in it, but it's not super duper difficult. The first thing I'm going to do though with this is there's still some quartz sand and other light materials left in there, so I'm going to just kind of shake it real good to let the gold settle down, and then I'm going to wash off the lighter materials. I'm going to do this until I've gotten most of the black sand and other light materials out, and I'm getting down to the end. You see I shake it again and more light materials come to the surface that I can wash off. There's a lot of different small finishing pans out there too. This isn't the only one. Excuse the train in the distance. I'm only about a quarter of a mile from the railroad tracks, and they make a lot of noise. But anyway, I'm not going to have you sit and watch me as I go through panning this down. I'm going to go ahead and do it, and then I'll come back to you and show you the step using the magnets. And you'll note that I'm panning into a tub, so I'm not going to lose anything. Anyway, I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so I've gone through and taken out as much of the light material as I can, and then I'm going to use my larger pan with a big bottom, the big flat underside, and I'm going to start spreading this out as thin as I can, because the whole idea of using magnets is, like I say, you don't want to suck up the gold along with the black sand. And so I'm going to hold this, I'm going to start with the weakest magnet, and I'm going to hold it above the material and shake it as I go. And see, I'm getting just a little bit. I'm getting the strongest and most magnetic stuff to stick to the magnet. Not collecting a whole lot with this really weak magnet, but I'm getting some, and we're taking out some of the strongest magnetics. And I've got some there, so I'm just going to peel that off, wash it off my hands. See, this is a case where having a weaker magnet is actually better. You can shake it to get any loose material off, because a weak magnet like this will not have the strength very well to suck up magnetics and gold at the same time. And I've got this, well, I would suggest if you're doing something like this for the first time, that you go into a test pan. You'll pan into a tub, and that's the first shot, the first go round is with this weak magnet. Okay, so I'm finishing up with the weak magnet. Shake it to make sure that there's nothing there. And the next step, you should be able to start to see in the pan that I'm getting some decent gold. It's starting to show. Now I'm using the stronger magnet, and I will shake it around and keep it well above the surface there, because we don't want to suck up anything from that includes gold. Probably also seeing that my the black sands are getting lighter, you know, that we're basically sucking up a lot of the magnetic portion of the black sand, and the remainder is more brown. Okay, so the final step is going to be the really powerful magnet. So I'll get that out, and it will suck up a lot of things that the other magnet just won't. But what's happened is we've gotten all the really strongly magnetic stuff out already. And there's one little piece that got stuck. It is possible there are some bits of gold that get wrapped around a little piece of magnetite, or they grow around a little piece of magnetite, and so you have to be careful when using a magnet. Take a look, you know, make sure you're not accidentally sucking up one of those types of pieces of gold. Okay, that's about it for the heavy duty magnet. And you can see it didn't get as much as the medium magnet, even though it's a lot stronger, simply because there just isn't that much left to get. And now I'll switch back to the finishing pan. Okay, so I'm back to having my gold in the little pan, and I'm just going to use a standard kind of panning technique of shaking and washing. Eventually, when I get down to just the gold, I'll be doing a little more bit of special shaking and washing. But this takes a little while to go through and wash the rest of this off, although it's way easier once the magnetic portion of the sand is removed. It's just loads easier, because what's left is some dark colored minerals that aren't nearly as dense, and some light colored minerals like zircon that aren't nearly as dense, and some remaining bit of quartz sand which isn't dense at all. So I'm going to do this and get it down to the very end. I'll show you the last little end steps that I do to take it to pure clean gold. Okay, so I filmed this last segment yesterday to show you the technique that I use at the very end to get the gold clean, and all the other segments came out fine. This segment didn't come out right, so we're going to do it over again today. And basically I've reset up what I had there, which is the gold and the last little bit of black sand. So on this thing I do kind of a circular washing technique, and I use my fingers a lot just to wash out. You know, you can push back any gold you see and push forward the black sand, and it goes fairly fast. I mean, really, it's not that difficult a process. Your thumb is very handy to use. And almost all of this is black sand. The gold wants to stay in the middle because it's heavier. When you circle around like that, the black sand just works its way out, and it doesn't take too long, and you're down to a pretty clean final product. And if you do it in the sun, you can see the gold pretty plainly. We'll cut forward on this, kind of speed the process up, just so I can get to the end and show you the clean gold. You also have the option of not necessarily dipping the entire pan in, just the part where there's the black sand sticking out. Another technique is just to let the water flow out very slowly. The gold, because it's heavier than the black sand, will want to stay behind. You can see I've pretty much got this to a completely clean bit of gold at the end, ready for weighing up, ready for storage, ready for shipment to a refiner. All done.
And here's that gold. It looks coarser than it really is. There's some finer gold underneath the coarser stuff on the surface. But, this stuff cleans up just nicely. This was from a dry washing bit that I did, but the gold here is fine. But the same technique works really good for finer gold. And here's some very fine gold that I did with this same technique. This stuff, the smaller stuff ranges on probably 100, 150 mesh. It's really small. So, it works either way. It just takes a little more time, a little more care. But something like this is plenty pure enough for smelting. There's a little bit of other stuff in there, but this is plenty clean enough for mixing up with some sort of flux and melting and pouring into a button.
So wherever you're doing prospecting, whatever kind of prospecting you're doing, panning, sluicing, dry washing, whatever, dredging, whatever you're doing, you need the skill to find the gold. If you have good equipment, a good sluice box or a good other system to collect the gold out of the gravels, that's great. But you need to know how to find the gold. And finding the gold is a skill. I get a lot of people say, oh, I tried it, I never found anything, or I only found a speck or two. Well, if you don't know what you're doing, your chances of success are pretty slim. The old timers went out there and got the easy stuff. You're getting the stuff that they missed or couldn't find or didn't know about or somehow ignored. And so the easy stuff, you're not going to walk out there and trip over a 3-pound nugget. You need to know what you're doing. And so in order to impart to you the skills of learning to find gold, because the skill of finding gold is almost like a journeyman, like a skill, trade skill kind of thing, where you learn the skill and you learn how to do it. I wrote a book. It's called Fistful of Gold, because that's what I want you to go out and find, is Fistful of Gold. And I also am partnered with an outfit called High Plains Prospectors, and they're basically a full line prospecting outfit that carries everything from a simple gold pan all the way through whatever you name it to a high-end metal detector and everything in between, and of course including my book. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my book and about High Plains. right now. This is my book, Fistful of Gold. It's an encyclopedia of everything you need to know to go out and find gold for yourself. It distills down my 45 years of experience out in the field prospecting, as well as my degree in mine engineering. It's, like I say, an encyclopedia. There's a lot to it. It's over 250,000 words long, hundreds of pages with hundreds of illustrations, teaching you what you need to know about geology, about mining districts, about techniques of finding gold. It covers metal detectors, sluicing, panning, dry washing, high bankers, you name it, it's covered in there. It talks some about platinum and diamonds, but it's mostly about gold because gold is more widespread. It is not so much a book about where to find gold, but a book about how to find gold. Because even if you have a location where gold was mined in the past and you go out there, well, where should you look to be successful in your prospecting, to find the gold that's there? This is the book that's going to tell you that information. I spent most of 10 years writing this book, so I thought a long time about it. It's got, like I say, lots of information and lots of illustrations, and I've had results from people who bought it. It's available on Amazon, but I recommend buying it through High Plains Prospectors, and I'll put a link in the description for buying this book through them. They have a better price than Amazon, and I have a special deal that I'll tell you a little bit more about, where you can get a 5% discount from the price even with that. On Amazon, the book rates a 4.7 out of 5, which means that of all the people that have bought it, they've been really highly satisfied, and I think you, if you buy my book, will be just as highly satisfied as well. Now let's talk a little bit more about High Plains Prospectors. They're a prospecting shop, a mail order prospecting shop that I've partnered with. The deal is that I can get you a 5% discount, a coupon code, and I'm going to put the code to that right here. It's just Chris Ralph, all caps with no space between Chris and Ralph. You put that in there as a discount code and you'll get 5% off their already really good prices. I think it's a great deal where you win by getting a discount, I get a little percentage of that, and they get new business. So if you need prospecting supplies, High Plains is really the way to go. And I'll put information, like I say, in the description more about how you can work with them, because I'm working with them. They really are great guys, a great company. For even more information, I also have a website, and I'm going to show you my webpage and talk a little bit more about that right now.
This is my webpage. It's located at NevadaOutbackGems.com. You can Google it, or I have a link down in the description below. But there's lots of information here, miscellaneous stuff, pictures, some historic information as well, stories. It's got a lot of great fun stuff. You'll probably be interested in it.
Now, on all of my YouTube videos, I encourage you guys to ask questions. If you have thoughts, comments, suggestions for things that I ought to look at in my videos, things that you want to find out more about, and I answer 100% of my questions. There's not very many YouTubers out there that answer 100% of their questions. I'm one of the few. And so I will do my best to answer what you have. I mean, I only can write so much. Sometimes the answer is something where I'm going to recommend that you buy the book and read about it. I also ask that you subscribe to my channel, click the bell notification so that every time I come out with a new video, you'll be able to watch it. And like I say, I cover a huge amount of topics. I also have 250 videos that I've already done. And so you can go back through my catalog of videos on YouTube. I'm sure there'll be many videos there that you'll want to take a look at, especially if you have any interest in gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, geology, and that sort of stuff. My YouTube site is going to be right up your alley. So I'll see you again real soon. We'll be out in the field and back in the office at the whiteboard, and whether we're looking at gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, or other interesting geology, it's going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it, and we'll see you again real soon.